The Millionaire and the Black Homeless Man meeting Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Rain hammered the city tonight, slick streets glowing under neon signs as thunder muttered like a warning. Jonathan Reed stood beneath the towering glass facade of the Grand Hotel, still catching his breath after the charity gala. His tailored coat clung damp around him, a billionaire's armor soaked in misery and flashing cameras. Everyone thought they knew him. Tech, genius, money, king, untouchable. But what no one expected was the black homeless woman who suddenly appeared from the shadows, her eyes sharp as broken glass, stepping into his path like she owned the storm. "Mr. Reed," she said, voice low and shaking, but fierce. The loud crowd behind them melted away in Jonathan's ears. Crowd buzzing with talk about Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Their names tossed around as if this night was a secret meeting of titans. Rumors had flickered all evening. Whispers about a deal, a scandal, something huge ready to. Her clothes hung loose and torn, soaked through and smelling of wet earth and old smoke. Yet her gaze cut through his carefully built walls, eyes haunted but electric with a strange hope. She carried a secret, drenched in darkness and shame. The kind that tied back to Jonathan's deepest regrets, the mistakes he buried behind headlines and patent fights. Behind her, the rain roared. Lightning flared like a cruel spotlight as Jonathan's rival's words echoed somewhere in the distance, a smear campaign crawling at the edges of his perfect image. The man wanted to make him crumble, to tear down everything Jonathan had built. But Esther held a thread leading straight to a past he wished away. They slipped away together, down narrow alleys, heavy with the smell of wet concrete and rotten secrets, far from glitzy smiles and champagne. The city's heartbeat beat under their feet, fast and angry. That's when it hit him. A forgotten invention, a breakthrough hidden in dusty boxes and discarded. His heart tightened. Could this broken piece of his past save him? Could it save Esther? Her presence was a mirror, reflecting years of cold decisions and missed chances. The rain masked their footsteps, but not the pounding in his chest, or the tremble in his hands as he faced what he tried to forget. A crowd gathering in the distance burst into shocked whispers. A scream cut the night. The night wasn't done with them yet. Jonathan glanced at Esther. Her face, streaked with rain and pain, was suddenly a fierce light, and a question no one dared answer. Can he change the story? Or will the weight of secrets drown them both? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without notice. Take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content that's coming. And since you're here, drop a powerful like that really helps me with the algorithm. Oh, and let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. The rain still pounded down, drowning out the city noise, but Jonathan felt the thrum of something deeper. His heart raced as Esther's piercing eyes searched his, holding a promise, yet unspoken. Just then, chaos erupted from just around the bend, where the crowd had gathered. excitement crackling like the air before a storm. "Get back! Move!" a voice shouted. Jonathan's stomach knotted. He pushed past Esther, adrenaline flooding his veins. In the flash of lightning, he saw the source. A man in a sharp suit, surrounded by security, face twisted with fear. This wasn't just any man. It was Donald Trump, a pulse of power thrumming in the air as he struggled against the grip of his own men. Then came the scream again, raw and cutting. Jonathan glanced back at Esther. Her eyes widened. Fear, yes, but something else fluttered there too. A sense of recognition, as if she knew this moment was more than just chaos. Before he could process, a second scream pierced the night. An explosion of sound, glass shattering, voices rising in a tumult as a figure emerged from the shadows behind Trump. Tall and moving with the kind of intense purpose normally reserved for heroes in movies, the man lunged forward, a gun glinting in his hand as he aimed it squarely at the billionaire. "No, wait!" Jonathan shouted, his voice lost in the whirlwind of panic. Before he could react, a flash of metal, a woman's hand clenched tight on the man's arm. Esther surged forward, eyes ablaze with fury. "Stop! You don't need to do this!" Jonathan's breath caught. This was not how it should be. Esther stepping in front of danger, a protector in the storm. The chaos erupted into an uproar as people tried to flee. The rain splattered against the ground like a rapid heartbeat, drowning out individual thoughts. "Esther, get back!" he yelled, reaching for her, but it felt like an eternity. But she didn't falter. Her words rang clear, cutting through the madness. "Please, listen to me. This isn't the answer." Then it happened. All at once, a muffled shot rang out, the sound echoing off the buildings. A ripple of shock traveled through the crowd. Faces twisted in horror. The gunman fell, two wet thuds against the slick pavement, his arm dropping limply to his side. Jonathan's heart dropped. Abraham, the man who had captured his attention, but had too often faded from memory. The homeless advocate, gone. But Esther stood frozen, eyes locked on the man, now sprawled before her, blood pooling beneath him. "Abraham!" She whispered, a raw edge to her voice. Jonathan felt the ground shift beneath him. The man wasn't just another casualty. This was the key to the very foundation of Esther's world, and something that dug deep into his own past. He had "No," he breathed, realization crashing over him like the rains. Esther's fire flickered into doubt, her strength pulled taut against the weight of her grief. Jonathan stumbled back, breathless. Could it be? Could saving Esther mean the unraveling of everything he had built? The crowd's murmurs turned into frenzied screams, but all he could hear was the echo of choices made long ago. A voice echoed within him, questioning. Could he change the story? Everything hinged on this moment. Then the space between them snapped with tension. A flash again lit up the night. The fleeting silhouette of a man he didn't recognize, standing tall among the chaos. Jonathan's chest tightened. He had a feeling he might discover something even darker, lurking in the depths of this storm. And as the thunder rolled overhead, closing in on them, one question clung to the cold air. Who was really in danger now? The crowd murmured, breaths thick with shock. a wave of whispers rising like a low tide. Jonathan's heart raced, time slipping through his grasp. Esther's eyes, wide and uncertain, mirrored his panic. Just moments ago, they were two souls adrift in the storm. And now, an apparition. A scream tore through the night, cutting the air like glass. "Run!" Esther shouted, her voice slicing through the chaos. But Jonathan was frozen, caught in a moment of disbelief. The noise trembled through the rain-drenched streets. He turned toward the source, wide-eyed. A flash of movement emerged from the corner. A figure, stumbling, wild-eyed, soaked through in a coat far too big. A moment later, a gunshot rang out, echoing against the glass towers, a thunderous crack that silenced the storm. People screamed, scattering like leaves in a whirlwind. Jonathan's instincts kicked in. He grabbed Esther's arm, adrenaline pumping. "This way!" He pulled her into a narrow alley, away from the chaos. They dashed into darkness, hearts pounding, breath quickening. But even as he embraced the urgency, a chill coursed through him. What was happening? Rain fell harder, painting the world in shades of gray. They pressed against the cold wall, breathless, eyes darting back, expecting the snap of danger. "What's going on?" Esther gasped, her earlier resolve overshadowed by fear. But before Jonathan could answer, a second gunshot cut through the night. More screams, more chaos. From the shadows, a figure emerged again, face smeared with blood and fear. It was a young man, eyes wide with a wild mixture of panic and determination. "They're coming!" he shouted, hands trembling. "They said they'd kill him! We can't stay here!" Jonathan blinked, trying to catch up. Who are you talking about?" The young man barely had time to speak before the alley erupted into screams again. He was suddenly pointing, emphasis sharp. "That man!" And then Jonathan turned. There, illuminated for just a heartbeat in the dying light of a shattered street lamp, was a familiar face. It was Chad, one of his former business partners. Blood pouring from a gash on his forehead. Terror etched in every line. "Help me!" Chad cried, desperation raw. Shock slammed into Jonathan like a freight train. "Chad?" The man staggered closer, but then, behind him, shadows shifted. More figures, faces cloaked in menace, their intentions clear. "Get away from him!" Esther's warning cut through the air, but it was already too late. Several men, sinister and determined, surged towards them. Jonathan pushed Esther behind him, instincts screaming to protect. "You can't take him! Not again!" Jonathan shouted, but Chad was already stumbling forward, jaw clenched. "He set me up!" Chad's words exploded in an echo of betrayal, igniting an inferno within Jonathan. Memories flooded back, shattered partnerships, hidden agendas, the very foundation of his empire, burning in flames of greed and deceit. The truth hit harder than the rain. He hadn't just built a business, he had built a prison, filled with secrets that now threatened to collapse. In that moment, the world twisted around them. Jonathan caught Esther's gaze, confusion mingling with a deepening fear. "What are you saying?" she asked, voice trembling. And then an explosion rocked the night. A flash of blinding light, consuming everything, leaving only shadows in its wake. Jonathan reached for Esther, but the ground trembled beneath him. Was this the end? Or just the beginning of the revelations yet to come? His heart raced. What had he been a part of? What had he lost? The laughter of the gala morphed into chaos, and the storm outside seemed to echo the tempest brewing inside. With the world falling apart around them, the one question loomed above all. Could they escape the truth, or would it consume them whole? The explosion roared through the night, a deafening sound that shook the very ground beneath Jonathan's feet. He couldn't process the chaos as he stumbled back, his grip on Esther faltering. The crowd around them erupted into screams, the shadows of panic washing over every face. But Jonathan had only one thought. They had to escape. "Esther, we have to go," he shouted, but her eyes were glued to the scene unfolding, confusion mixing with dread. "No, Jonathan, wait!" she exclaimed, her voice rising above the storm. But something changed within her. The light that had flickered in her eyes moments before was dimming. As the chaos unfolded, Jonathan's heart raced, his mind on the danger. But Esther's face revealed something darker, something buried. He turned back to Chad, who was still staggering toward them, bloodied and desperate. But Chad's expression twisted in fear, brows knitted tight as he screamed, "You don't understand. They're not just after me." "What do you mean?" Jonathan shot back, his heart racing. A sudden hush fell over the crowd, a strange calm that felt unnatural amid the storm. Eyes widened, and all attention zeroed in on Chad. "You can't trust anyone!" he shouted, voice cracking. Every head turned, every heartbeat synchronized with dread. And then, from the depths of shadows, a figure emerged, tall and imposing, almost ghostly in the haze of the falling rain. It moved with a predator's grace, the kind that sent chills down Jonathan's spine. He squinted through the darkness, and his throat constricted as recognition washed over him, followed by disbelief. "No, it can't be!" he gasped. The man stepped closer, a familiar face from the past he thought he'd buried. It was Marcus, his former partner, the man who had vanished after a shady deal gone wrong, leaving echoes of betrayal in his wake. "Surprise, Jonathan!" Marcus smirked, his calm shattered by chaos around him. The crowd parted, an unseen force pushing them away, leaving only the three of them standing there. Esther's eyes flickered between them, shock and confusion etched deep in her features. What is going on?" Jonathan felt the weight of betrayal crash into him like a tidal wave. "You set this up!" he spat, the fury spilling out, mixing with the rain. "You left me to take the fall." Then, without warning, Chad lunged forward, desperation fueling his movement. "You don't understand. He's been playing you, Jonathan. He orchestrated it all." The words hit Jonathan hard, a punch to his gut. "What?" The flash of understanding ignited a fire in his belly. Everything, the shady deals, the look of betrayal in Chad's eyes, the chaos tonight, was all part of Marcus's game. "You've been in control this whole time, haven't you?" "Of course," Marcus drawled, a sinister grin spreading across his face. "You were the perfect distraction. Look around you. You're nothing but a pawn, Jonathan." The sting of truth cut deep. A feeling of betrayal and shame coiled tightly inside him, choking every breath. He glanced over at Esther, who looked more lost than ever, caught in a storm of emotions she couldn't decipher. "Stay back, Jonathan," she warned. stepping into the darkness as her voice broke, trembling. "This isn't what you think." "Esther, please," he pleaded, confusion merging into panic. But she shook her head, tears mingling with rain. A powerful fracture forming between them. "I see it now. You weren't helping. You were playing both sides." Before he could respond, another scream erupted, a crack of thunder accentuating the fear churning through the crowd. Winced faces, fear-fueled glances darting around. Everything fell silent. All eyes locked onto Marcus as the energy shifted, potent and electric. "Do you really think this is just about money, Jonathan?" Marcus taunted, stepping closer, eyes gleaming with malice. "This is bigger than you could ever imagine." Jonathan swallowed, heart racing, mind racing faster. "What are you talking about?" In a sudden flash of movement, Marcus pulled out a small device from his coat, raising it high. "You're about to find out." The object bleeped ominously, its red light blazing like a warning. Jonathan's chest tightened, panic surging as he realized just what was on the line. "No, you can't!" Jonathan shouted, lunging forward, but the world turned upside down as a rumble filled the air, and the ground beneath them shook violently. The twist was brutal, a trap sprung, the danger more extensive than he ever guessed. Questions spiraled through his mind. Had he walked into a war unknowingly? Was everything he built doomed by roots deeper than he ever dug? "Jonathan!" Esther cried, her voice slicing through the chaos, but it felt like they were worlds apart. And as the storm raged on, reality shattered. The power of betrayal loomed nearby, threatening to erase everything he thought he knew. Did he still have time to save Esther? Or was this a story that had already been written, destined for destruction? The night fell heavy around them, shadows swallowing their figures as they turned the corner. Thunder rolled above, a distant reminder of nature's fury. But on the street, all was chaos. Jonathan's heart raced as he glanced back, feeling the weight of the world pressing down. Esther stayed close, her presence both grounding and electric. Suddenly, the crowd erupted in a frenzy. A woman screamed, shattering the tension like glass. Jonathan's instinct kicked in. He pulled Esther into the alcove of a building, just moments from the main street, where anxiety thickened in the air. The neon lights flickered, casting odd shadows as panic rippled through the people outside. "What's happening?" Esther asked, her voice trembling, eyes darting to the scene. Jonathan strained to hear, but the intensity of the chaos swallowed half-formed words. "I don't know, but we need to move." But then came the unmistakable thud of boots against concrete, loud shouts erupting with urgency. It felt too close, as if the city had shifted, unleashing something dark and urgent. Dread crawled up his spine. "Stay behind me," he ordered, his voice sharper than he meant. As Esther nodded, her face a mix of determination and fear, he stepped forward, peeking around the corner. What he saw nearly made his heart stop. There, amid the swirling confusion, stood a tall figure. Dark skin, a sharp suit, eyes that seemed to glimmer like storm clouds. Jonathan squinted through the rain, disbelief clawing at his thoughts. How could it be? "Esther," he whispered, breathless. That's me, in a way." "What do you mean?" "The man is But before he finished, a series of flashbulbs burst like fireworks, illuminating the scene. The stranger raised a hand, capturing the attention of the crowd. It was Jonathan, or rather, it was his face, sharp and confident. But this man had a dangerous smile, a sinister charm radiating power he had never felt before. "Ladies and gentlemen, the truth is out tonight," he declared, his voice booming. "I am Jonathan Reed, but not the one you think." Jonathan's hands trembled. A specter of himself stood there, revealing secrets that could shatter worlds. Glances passed between the crowd, disbelief and terror mixing in their expressions. "What is he talking about?" Esther asked, her voice barely a whisper, as if afraid the truth would seep into their reality. That's when the stranger continued. "All these years you've supported a man who built his empire on lies, on the ruins of those he left behind. I, too, was once destined for greatness, and now I stand here tonight to bear the truth." Jonathan's mind raced. Lies? What lies? He had built a billion-dollar empire through grit and intelligence. But as the crowd surged forward, eyes wide and hungry for revelation, a knot formed in his chest. If this man exposed his past, if the truth about Esther surfaced, what would happen to both of them? The stranger's words twisted like a knife. "I am here to reveal who the real Jonathan Reed is, and together we will tear down this facade." Gasps echoed above the patter of rain. Could this be the end of everything Jonathan knew? Esther scrip, "Daite nonis arma! ¿Qué hacemos?" Des shouts splittan los ois. Jonathan felta terminándose en torno a él, sintiéndose sin parezca y casi. Y mira hacia sus ojos, buscando algo, entendimiento, coraje, una salida. Pero todo lo que vio necesita para actuar. ¿Qué tal pudiera luchar contra una batalla que sentían por encima muchos? Loctin un momento que se sentía clemente eternidad. Las estrellas cautivas de la noche, la urgencia surge de sus espaldas. Apretó su gripa por su brazo, llevándolo a cortesina de un callejón vacío. Cada ida de ramas de lluvia, sintiéndose acerca de peso la tensión del pie, sinfonías caótica. "Are you okay?" he asked, breathless, a flicker of panic in his voice. She nodded, but her eyes were wide, scanning the edges of darkness, alert and instinctual. "What was that?" Before Jonathan could answer, a loud crash shattered the air, the sound like glass exploding. Both jumped, adrenaline rushing through their veins. Jonathan's heart raced in time with the pounding rain. "Stay close," he whispered, leading her deeper into the shadows. They pressed against a damp wall, peering out toward the street. A crowd had gathered. People murmured, pointing, faces painted with shock. Jonathan squinted, trying to see. Then he noticed it, the unmistakable silhouette of a body sprawled on the slick ground. A pool of crimson reflecting neon lights. His throat tightened. No, it can't be. But the whispers confirmed it. The victim was Elijah, a well-known local activist, once a beacon of hope for the city's homeless. Now, fate had thrown him to the ground, lifeless. Jonathan's stomach twisted, the weight of his success crumbling. It felt like the shattering of glass inside him. Esther's grip slipped into his as she gasped, "No, not him!" Before he could speak, the air buzzed. Flashing lights illuminated the scene, police cars swarming like angry bees. The night exploded with sirens and the heavy sound of boots on asphalt. But one figure stood out. Elon Musk himself, stepping out from an expensive vehicle, flanked by bodyguards, eyes scanning the scene with shocking indifference. Jonathan's stomach turned. Musk and Elijah had clashed before. Their ideologies were polar opposites. The air felt charged, the energy electric with tension. "What's he doing here?" Jonathan muttered, anger bubbling beneath the surface. "Maybe he knows something," Esther said, voice trembling. Then, as if on cue, a flash of fire erupted near the gathering crowd. Gunshots rang out, loud and terrifying. Chaos unfolded. People screamed, scattering like leaves in the storm. Jonathan's heart raced. His instincts kicked in. "We need to go, now!" But Esther didn't move. She stared, ripe with emotion, confusion, and something else creeping back into her gaze. "Jonathan, that night when you left, I couldn't." The words hung heavy, a weight Jonathan had tried to ignore. He turned to her, struck by a realization that pierced through the chaos. Esther wasn't just another face in the crowd. She was tied to his past, his mistakes. The storm raged outside, but inside him a storm of guilt swirled. "I didn't know," he whispered, desperation twisting his words. But before he could unravel the truth, another scream rent the air. Esther's eyes widened, her breath hitching as she clutched her chest. "Jonathan, we need to get out, now!" Just as he reached to pull her away, she staggered back, falling into the shadows. Jonathan's heart plunged. Then he saw it, a glimmer in her hand. A metal flash. His breath caught in his throat. "A gun?" Fear and anger collided. "Esther, what is that?" he barked, voice strained, confusion dancing in adrenaline. But her face had twisted into a desperate snarl, a fierce light replaced with something darker. "You don't understand. This all leads back to you." And with that, everything shifted. The rain poured harder, drowning the screams around them, as Jonathan faced the truth he wanted to bury. Esther wasn't just a ghost from his past. She was part of a game he never wanted to play. And his own secrets might be the very thing that turned the tide against him. Could they escape this? Would he pay for choices that weren't his alone? As she stared back, defiance and fear entwined in her gaze, Jonathan felt the ground shake beneath him. This wasn't just about them anymore. It was about a storm ready to break wide open. The rain fell harder now, drumming on the streets like nature's own percussion, echoing Jonathan's racing heart. Esther stood beside him, her presence a fragile thread against the storm. The distant crowd roared. He could feel their energy crackling in the air. A chaos he wanted to escape. Another scream cut through the noise, sharp and chilling. Jonathan turned instinctively, dread pooling in his stomach. Then he saw it, a flash of movement. Figures darting between the shadows. Panic flared in him as he caught a glimpse of a masked man, brandishing something glinting in the darkness. His stomach dropped. "Esther, we need to go," he urged, reaching for her arm. But she wouldn't budge. Her eyes were locked on the chaos unfolding. A crowd formed around the scene, gasps weaving through the air, holding their breath like a collective heartbeat. Then, in one gut-wrenching moment, the masked figure lunged. He swung the knife, the blade catching the faint light. Bright and terrible, Jonathan's instincts screamed. He pushed Esther behind him, feeling the heat radiate from her body, as if their shared fear ignited the space between them. Time froze, and then everything erupted. More screams, the sound of shattering glass, chaos unleashed. Jonathan felt the energy shift. He turned to face the crowd, and then he saw it. A woman at the front, clutching a child in a crumpled coat, eyes wide with terror. "Help! Please! He's got a knife!" she cried, her voice piercing through the storm like a beacon. Jonathan's eyes met Esther's. Something unspoken passed between them. She nodded, and he felt the warmth of determination sparking to life in the pit of his gut. "Stay back, Point!" Jonathan yelled to the crowd, his voice mixing with the panic. He had to act. He couldn't let this moment spiral into something worse. With a deep breath, he stepped forward. Esther's voice broke through the thrumming chaos. "Jonathan, wait!" Her words were urgent, but he was moving. No time to hesitate. Just as he approached, everything altered in an instant. The masked man turned, eyes locking with Jonathan's, and for a split second, Jonathan felt a shiver run up his spine. There was recognition in those eyes, a flicker of something he couldn't quite grasp. "Jonathan Reed," the man growled, pulling off his mask, and Jonathan staggered back as the face revealed itself. Eric, his former partner, the one left behind in the ashes of their shared dreams. The crowd gasped collectively, the whisper of surprise sweeping through them like an electric shock. "What are you doing?" Jonathan shouted, horror and confusion coiling in his chest. "You should be dead!" Eric's lips curled into a twisted smile. "You thought you could forget me? You thought I'd let you drown in your perfect world?" Jonathan's breath caught in his throat. The rain blurred the edges of his vision, and all he felt was the weight of a past he had desperately tried to escape. He had buried so many secrets. Faced with Eric, they clawed back to the surface. "Esther, we need to get out of here," he shouted, but her grip on his arm tightened. "Wait," she whispered, eyes flickering between Jonathan and Eric. "What's happening?" Then, just as Jonathan opened his mouth to respond, the night shattered once more. A shout rang out from behind the crowd, a voice that sent another shockwave through him. "You don't even know the truth, Jonathan." It was his father. The entire world tilted. Truths once buried seemed ready to explode. Jonathan's heart raced, fear pulsating through him as he turned toward the source. Everything that he thought he knew was about to unravel. Who was telling the truth? What did this night mean for them all? And in the storm, under the weight of betrayal and secrets, they stood on the edge of total chaos. The rain poured heavier, drowning all reason and sound. The air crackled. Jonathan's heart raced, fear tangling with adrenaline as he turned to face his father, the man who had been a ghost in his past. His eyes narrowed against the downpour, struggling to believe this was real. "What do you mean, Dad?" Jonathan's voice rose, filling the alley with tension. "Everything!" his father shouted, stepping closer, drenched but defiant. You've been a pawn this whole time. The truth is bigger than you ever imagined. Esther's confusion deepened as she looked between Jonathan and his father. What truth? Jonathan could feel the intensity in the air, a lightning bolt waiting to strike. He wanted to yell, to know what secrets lay buried beneath the surface of their lives. But as his father opened his mouth, ready to spill words that could shatter everything, a loud bang echoed through the street. An explosion that shook the very ground they stood on. A blast of heat pushed against Jonathan and Esther, both stumbling back against the wall. "No!" Jonathan screamed, instinctively reaching for Esther, the fear clawing at his throat. Smoke billowed from the corner of the street where the crowd had gathered, a dark cloud swallowing figures whole. People screamed, scattering like pigeons in a storm. Jonathan's vision blurred as he tried to grasp what was happening. The chaos had shifted in an instant, and amid that confusion, he heard a voice rise above it all, sharp and cold. "Get away from him!" The silent dread wrapped around Jonathan as Eric launched toward him, rage carved deep into his features, the knife still glinting ominously in his grip. "Jonathan!" Esther shouted, her voice slicing with urgency. Pivoting on instinct, Jonathan lunged to protect her, but Eric's wild eyes didn't see Esther. They were focused on something else. Suddenly, he pointed the knife at Jonathan's father. "You think you can hide behind your son? You're nothing without him." The crowd surged backward, gasps rippling through them. Moments stretched as Jonathan's heart thundered in his chest. He barely registered the fear in his father's eyes before Eric lunged, desperation tainting the air. "No!" Jonathan yelled as he dove between them. Time slowed, his body moving instinctively, adrenaline firing every nerve. As he fell, he felt the sharp pain pierce through his side, heat exploding inside him like a firecracker. The world exploded into chaos. Esther's scream shattered his thoughts, each cry a piercing knife. Jonathan hit the concrete, the rain mingling with the warmth spreading through him. His breaths were shallow, each inhale turning into a ragged gasp. "No, no, no", Esther gritó, falling tutunidas del lado de él, pánica atravesando sus manos, como se presionaba contra la herida. "Por favor, quédate conmigo". Todo burló. El ruido que había alrededor se retiente en eco lejano, y él no tenía que poder presiones de la gontural estante emocionada de la traición. En ese momento, como sombras bailaban y parecían que vuelen. Ajunten toda, esparcó en el pecho de su mente. Su vida, el imperio construido sobre ambición y tech, ruinó alrededor de él. Destinado para este tipo de escape, una línea de desespero. And then, a deep, rumbling laugh. Jonathan's father, tears welling in his eyes, revealed the truth with a heavy heart. "All of this, my son, was only the beginning." As Jonathan struggled to stay conscious, fighting against the encroaching darkness, he wondered, what was his father hiding? And would he ever truly escape the storm? The chaos swirled around them like a tempest, but all Jonathan could hear was Esther's voice, frantic and desperate. "Please, stay with me!" Her hands pressed against his wound, warmth mixing with the rain that soaked through their bodies. A tightness gripped his chest as everything faded in and out. Shadows danced on the edge of his vision, flickering in and out of focus. "Dad, what do you mean?" He managed to gasp, but the urgency in his father's eyes didn't waver. The world shrank to the sound of his own heart, each throbbing beat pulsing through the chaos. He felt as if he were teetering on the edge of an abyss. Just then, a flood of movement caught his gaze, and a figure emerged from the gathering crowd, wild-eyed and frantic, a dark silhouette pushing through the chaos. "Get back! Get back!" the figure screamed, sprinting toward them, panic in every breath. It was a woman, her eyes alight with fear. "Abby, no!" Jonathan's father shouted, reaching out, but it was too late. She barreled toward him, the knife glinting in Eric's hands, forgotten in the commotion. In a blur, a shot rang out, echoed by the roar of a shotgun blast. The crowd froze, shock etching across their faces like a sudden, terrible painting. Esther jerked back, releasing Jonathan's wound as both of them turned towards the sound. "Abby!" Jonathan's father bellowed, voice cracking with horror. But it wasn't Abby's name that sent a shiver down Jonathan's spine. It was the blaring silence that filled the space between heartbeats. The figure fell to the ground, collapsing like a marionette with severed strings. Shock rippled through the crowd, their collective gasp akin to a stunned exhale. Jonathan's breath hitched. Time slowed. He felt like he was watching a scene from a dream, a nightmare. "No," he whispered, awareness sinking in. Abby was Jonathan's sister, the one that had vanished years ago without a trace. The family had grieved her loss. Every holiday marked by the empty chair at the table, the silence, the unasked questions that had haunted their family. Now here she lay, cracked pavement soaking up her blood, betrayal streaming through the air. His heart thudded painfully against his ribs. Something inside him splintered. "Jonathan," Esther breathed, eyes wide with realization and shock. Then she turned to his father, who looked as if the world had just ended. "Where were you?" Jonathan choked out, emotions warring within him. "Why didn't you look for her?" His father faltered, guilt washing over him like rain. This wasn't just about tonight. This was about years lost. "I tried," he murmured, voice thick with pain. But Jonathan couldn't hear him. His world spun on unsteady axis, every guiding star slipping away. "Jonathan!" Esther grabbed his arm, her voice breaking through. "We need to get out before this gets worse." But he couldn't move. He was rooted in that moment, unable to look away from what lay before him. The crowd surged, whispers growing louder, confusion driving into panic. Shadows flickered, and then, from distant darkness, more figures appeared. "They're coming!" a voice shouted. Somewhere in the back, a silhouette moved rapidly, leading a tide of uniformed shadows through the alley. The blast and chaos ushered in sirens that screamed like banshees. "No!" Jonathan finally yelled, shaking his head in a frenzy. "This can't be real." Abby's body lay there, his sister, a ghost of his past, suddenly made flesh again, but dead before him. What had he done? What had they done? But then, a flash of light tore through the shadowy crowd, landing squarely on his father's face, a partner walking back from a darkness of his own. And Jonathan gasped as his father, eyes wide, suddenly shouted, "You did this!" The ground shifted beneath him. Betrayal, sharper than any knife, cut through their makeshift family. secrets unraveling in the open air like a tattered banner tossed in the storm. Jonathan staggered back, heart racing, the world spinning around him. What? No, that's not true. But looking into his father's eyes, he sensed he would have to confront a truth far darker than he could ever have guessed. And as the night raged on, questions piled within him. Who could he trust now? What had been lost in the shadows? The storm was just beginning. The darkness would rise again, and he had no idea how deep it would drag him down. The rain pounded around them, roiling shadows and flashing memories mixing into a chaotic blur. Jonathan lay on the cold, slick concrete, consciousness slipping through his fingers like water. The rain merged with the blood pooling beneath him, and the frantic cries of the crowd faded into muffled echoes. "Jonathan, please!" Esther's voice broke through, her hands trembling as she pressed desperately against the wound. "Stay with me." Her eyes shone bright with fear and determination, anchoring him to the moment. He felt the warmth of her energy seep into him, a spark amid the cold darkness creeping at the edges of his vision. The eruption of chaos surrounded them. John's father knelt beside Abby, his breath hitching, tears streaming down his rain-soaked face. "I thought I'd lost you too." His voice shattered, raw with grief. But his pain sparked something in Jonathan. A flicker of understanding in the storm of betrayal. Tension twisted in the air as Eric stood there, the knife dropping from his grip. Both shock and rage etched into his face. "You'll never escape what you've done, Jonathan. You can't run from the ghosts of your past." But his words fell flat, swallowed by the wailing sirens closing in. The night felt alive, tumultuous. Sirens wailed, bright lights slashed through the shadows, and uniformed figures surged in, demanding order amid the chaos. Eyes wide with fear, Jonathan sensed the weight of a past unraveling around him. His heart thundered, pounding with a relentless urgency. "Jonathan!" Esther's voice ripped through the air, pulling him back. "We have to go, now!" Pushing himself up with laborious effort, Jonathan locked eyes with Esther, who mirrored his anguish and resolve. "We can't leave them," he whispered, but she shook her head, her voice cracking. "Don't! They'll come for you next." The tightness in his chest unfurled into panic. Would running mean abandoning his family? The wounds ran deep, but the truth stretched further back, a tangled web of choices and consequences. As the officers moved forward, separating Eric from their frantic retreat, Jonathan grabbed Esther's hand. They sank back into the shadows, hearts racing in sync, a shared pulse amid the chaos. The heavy weight of their reality pressed down, but resilience glimmered in their grasp. "Where do we go?" Esther breathed, eyes standing for an escape. "Anywhere but here." Jonathan pulled her along, their steps quiet against the rain-slick pavement, weaving through alleys alive with the frantic energy of the night. Each heartbeat echoed with the urgency to survive. But behind them, the storm remained, churning with voices they hadn't left behind. They turned a final corner and stopped, breathless, leaning against a wall, drenched in the glow of an overhead street lamp. The buzzing of chaos faded just a little, and for a moment, silence enveloped them. "Don't you see?" Esther whispered, her gaze penetrating. "This might be our chance to change." "Change?" Jonathan echoed, still feeling the impact of everything that had transpired. But he met her hope with uncertainty. The shadows of his past loomed omnipresent. Esther stepped closer, eyes fierce. We can rewrite our stories. You and me fight for something real. Hope flickered like a fragile flame, igniting something within him amidst the rubble of grief and betrayal. Jonathan nodded, finally feeling the resolve solidify in his chest. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about redemption. The rain softened, as if the world was holding its breath alongside them. In that moment, they made a promise to each other to stand together against whatever came next. For Jonathan, it felt like the dawn of something new. But somewhere down that rain-soaked street, unresolved questions loomed as the echoes of their past faded against the rhythm of the storm. Don't miss out on the next twist in this story. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the exclusive coming chapters. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep the story alive. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories. I want to hear what you think about this ending. And don't wait even a second longer to share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see how it wraps up. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Let's keep this adventure going.